Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great start to your summer. And for those of you who are on birthright right now, who flew to Israel yesterday, I hope that your first day in Israel has been fantastic, that the flight over was uneventful, and that you're prepared for what is likely to be a life changing experience. As I was reading the news this morning, it was striking to me the extent to which there is so much misinformation, or at least misleading information out there. It made me confused about what exactly is going on in Israel and Gaza. Is Israel invading Rafah? Is there a ceasefire agreement? What is happening? And I figured that perhaps some of you are feeling the same way. And so I wanted to make this video to explain in sort of real time. It's about 12:40 on the afternoon of May 7th. What exactly the situation is. I'm going to divide this video into three different sections: diplomatic negotiations, the military situation, and sort of the humanitarian crisis that's continuing to unfold. I wanted to start with what has been the big news in the world is the ceasefire, the diplomatic negotiations. It was reported widely yesterday that Hamas agreed to a ceasefire deal. And in this deal, Hamas would return 33 hostages, dead or alive. And this is sort of in exchange for a number of things, including the release of Palestinian prisoners, as well as sort of an immediate end to the war by Israel. So let me tell you why this is a little bit misleading. One reason is that Hamas is agreeing to terms that Israel had never seen. So there's a number of places and a number of sites and a number of posts online that have intimated that Israel should just agree to this same thing, implying that Israel and Hamas have both seen the same deal. Well, this is not true. Hamas said this is really sort of a response by Hamas. They're allowed to do this. This is how negotiations work. But it feels very much like the dead or alive components and the immediate end to the war components are almost certainly non-starters with Israel. The terms that of the deal that Hamas agreed to, that Hamas sort of responded to Israel with, is that this would be three phases. The first phase would be 6 weeks, and there would be 33 hostages released, and that, remember, that's dead or alive, in exchange for 30 Palestinian women or children released from, I guess, Israeli custody for each hostage released. Part of phase one would be 600 trucks of aid entering Gaza per day. And on the sixth week, all the remaining hostages and prisoners would be released. There would be a partial Israeli troop withdrawal, and there would be free movement in Gaza between the south and the north, so people can sort of return to their lives. Phase two, also 6 weeks, is a little bit more amorphous. There's something called a sustainable calm, which I have read is a phrase that Israel and Hamas agreed to in order to keep the phrase permanent ceasefire off the table, because that was apparently a red line for them that would sort of derail negotiations. And in phase two, there would be reservists and soldiers who were held hostage released in exchange for more prisoners, and a complete withdrawal of quote unquote most Israeli troops. Now, it's pretty unclear what most means in this context, but that's where phase two is. Phase three involves exchanging the bodies of those who have died in the fighting, as well as the beginning of reconstruction on a 3 to 5 year plan overseen by Qatar, Egypt, and the United Nations. You might suspect what the international response has been. Much of Europe and certainly the Middle East has encouraged, or at least put forth, heavy pressure on Israel to accept these terms. The United States, it's very important to note, just said that they were going to study it with their allies. That means they're not immediately pressing Israel to accept these terms, but the United States is aware that this has happened. The left, especially the left in Western Europe, has seen this as an opening to end the war, to push Israel to stop the fighting and accept these terms. That's the diplomatic negotiations. This is sort of a rapidly changing story that we will continue to sort of watch. Part two that I wanted to talk about is the military situation. Israel has started what appears to be an attack on Rafah. There's been some aerial bombardment. This morning, Israel took the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing, though there was reporting about an hour ago that Israel is not actually controlling that side. It's really they're working with Palestinian partners that are not Hamas to control it. That means that there's still aid able to get in through both the Rafah crossing and Kerem Shalom. This attack is likely to provoke condemnation from large parts of the world. Certainly the United Nations, but Western Europe, even the United States, has been very hesitant to condone this kind of attack. And so it's going to be interesting to see the extent to which this attack on Rafah, however it's going to unfold, will play a role in sort of the relationship between Israel and the United States moving forward. It's important to note here that Prime Minister Netanyahu, Bibi, has repeatedly promised that this is going to happen. It's not a surprise. Yesterday and the day before, there had been leaflets dropped, notification given to residents of Rafah, at least of specific neighborhoods, to move to different areas that were set up specifically for these, I guess, internally displaced refugees. So this is not coming as a shock, but it's still going to be received badly. I think it's important to note here that yesterday and on Sunday, Israel saw massive protests against the government. The Ayalon Highway in Tel Aviv was blocked by, we're talking about, over 10,000 protesters who were demanding a ceasefire, who were demanding the return of the hostages and the end to the Netanyahu government. So that's another sort of point of pressure that's leading to some issues going on. And I think the final point that I wanted to sort of address today is the humanitarian situation. Kogat, which is the Israeli ministry responsible for aid getting into Gaza, has continued to ramp up aid, largely in response to international pressure, must be said. Kogat said today that the Erez crossing and the Kerem Shalom crossing are both fully functional and receiving aid. It also said that the international community had asked Kogat to reduce the amount of aid given to the northern part of Gaza, which you might suspect is because northern Gaza has been largely depopulated during the fighting. And so some of that aid is going to be redirected, you would think, to places like Khan Yunis and Rafah that are much more densely populated and much more in dire need of this assistance. So what are the conclusions? And again, I'm trying to give facts, not my opinion. It looks like Israel is going to go through with a full-scale assault. Now, it's conceivable that this is just a negotiating tactic. It's really tough to see how the United States is going to respond. It doesn't sound in any way like the United States is going to stop all aid to Israel, but it's going to be a point of contention domestically for the president and other members of the Democratic Party. The ceasefire negotiations are still underway. The CIA director, Bill Burns, is still in Qatar trying to keep this process alive. I would say now we're transitioning to my opinion. I'm not optimistic that there's an agreement on the table that can be reached today. I do think that there is an agreement that can be reached, and I think eventually there will be a diplomatic solution found. But as of right now, I'm not sure that's immediately in the cards. If you have any questions, certainly I'm here. You know how to get in touch with me. Thank you. Please, I'll give more updates about other things in the next week or so. Just want to make sure that as everyone is away from campus, I'm continuing to teach and make sure that all of us are on the same page with what's happening. Have a good one.